Episode one of Welcome to the Tech Show. Again, my name is Thomas Richard. I have a background in just messy real world implementations, both from the corporate side, where I worked for a fitness company as a marketing director and sales director, small startup before that when I was in my 20s, and co founder of Unlimited Tech Solutions, a Elite HubSpot partner for the last 5 years. And this is my co host, Corné of Driel, to intro himself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. I am Corné, co-founder and CTO of Unlimited Tech Solutions. I've got a pretty significant background in sort of the information technology space, starting in welding consumables, industrial gases, and mining, moving into financial technology for many years, then into legal technology, and finally, this is where we find ourselves in really messy CRM implementations, integrations, data migrations, sort of the fun stuff, but the less glamorous work, I guess, in the consulting world.
So the reason why we're starting a podcast, it's not because the world needs another podcast. Corné and I have been doing implementation work along with our lovely staff. We're currently about 31 people, I believe, is our head count. We do the non-glamorous implementation work of whether it's implementing HubSpot. There's usually HubSpot involved at some point, but it's not necessarily a HubSpot business. Um, we solve business problems. When Corné and I first started this, we both were leaving corporate gigs where we'd seen lots of things. I'll just leave it at that. And we said, hey, well, we need a job. What are we good at doing? And we put our heads together and realized that there are lots of problems to solve out there in the implementation world and in the business process world, and that we had a knack for being able to solve those problems. So we put this company together. So fast forward 5 years into episode one of Welcome to the Tech Show, and we see a lot of dumb things out there. And Corné and I have not been very public for the first 5 years of this company. We're going to try to change that via Welcome to the Tech Show podcast. And we wanted to start it simply because there are things that there's better ways to think about it, I guess, is what I'm saying. And we figured if we could get together and discuss these in a public forum, that it'll provide some value to the people that are struggling with some of the implementation um, process, or really, honestly, even just the way to think about it. Right. So that's why we're doing this. We're going to have a dialogue around things that are happening in uh, the world that we operate in, whether that's HubSpot, it's AI, it's integrations, it's business process, kind of wherever the wind may take us. So that's my take on why we are starting the Welcome to the Tech Show podcast. Corné, what would you add to that or change?
Don't think I'd necessarily change anything. I've done some podcasts in the past. I really found them enjoyable, and it's really a place where you can speak your mind. Now, of course, we represent our brand when we're here, so we'll try and be not too mean, but it's a place where you can really speak your mind, talk about some of the things that you're seeing either in the industry or in specific projects without, of course, mentioning the project, and just really get some outside feedback on exactly what we're seeing, whether the rest of the implementation partners or customers are seeing the same things, how they're solving those, and then just have constructive dialogue with pretty much the space at large.
So what we want to start with and what we want to talk about today, I'm going to sound like Peter Griffin on, it really grinds my gears. For those of you that get the reference, kudos to you. You are a cool person. What really grinds my gears, at least what's top of mind for me right now, is feature shopping. We get so many people who will come to us, and I'm usually the first one through the door, and they bring their little lists of features, and this program does this, and this program does that, and we want to connect this program and connect that program and connect this other program, and while that's fine, it's it's similar to going to a doctor and saying, I want these meds and I want these meds and I want this surgery and I want this. You wouldn't really do that. I mean, you might, but it means you're not the doctor's favorite patient, I guess, if you're doing it that way. The best way to solve a problem is be clear on what your problem is, right? A problem well defined is 80% solved. I don't know if that's the real percentage, but it sounds good to me. That's salesperson math. But problem well
90%
defined.
of all statistics are made up on the spot, so
That's right.
80% is accurate.
That sounds perfect. That adds up. That checks out. So the feature shopping part, you're slowing down the solution to the problem, and I'm not going to segue completely into AI. I'm sure that's going to come up in some episode, maybe this one. AI right now is the worst, right? It's a shiny new toy. Everybody's talking about it. Oh, this thing does this. This thing does that. This other thing does this. Yet nobody's actually stopping and saying like, do we need that? Like, what impact is that going to make? So that's kind of my first point. And then at some point we'll get in and we'll talk through some of the projects where they kind of came in one way and we're kind of able to straighten them out. Not because we're trying to like sell you on who we are or do anything. Trust me, if anyone who knows us or will get to know us knows we're not really salespeople. We're just problem solvers. We have opinions. We're not shy, and we like to talk it through. But the feature shopping piece is is a bit rough. So I guess what I'm encouraging is articulate the problem, find somebody you trust, vet them. Find somebody you trust, present the problem, and you're going to learn more about the person you're presenting the problem to by how they receive that information, how they process that information. You're going to learn a lot, I guess. I'm smiling because I'm trying to not sound like a snob a little bit, but it might be showing a little bit.
I'm not really involved in the sales process, at least not directly, right? I'm kind of behind the scenes. They keep me in the cave out behind the building to keep me away from people. But I think I'll probably mirror that, even though I'm not that involved in the sales process. When I do get involved and I need to figure out what the customer or a prospect actually needs, it is a lot easier for me to talk through what you're experiencing as a business and for me to ask questions around what you're experiencing as a business. And then for me to go and figure out how we could potentially solve that. Now, I'm not always going to have a solve for you. Some things fall outside of the sort of confines of what we do as a business. And in that case, we will tell you that and we'll refer you out somewhere else if we have someone to refer you to. Otherwise, we'll wish you well. It's a lot harder if you show up with uh, a predetermined solution that you have come up with in your business and wanting me to implement that as you saw it in your vision for the company, which it's your company, you're free to do that. However, if you were able to do that effectively and efficiently and you had the required experience to do that, you wouldn't even have me in the room. You don't need me, right? I'm not the GP that writes you the sick note so you don't have to go into the office tomorrow. We're significantly more specialized than that. So you are wasting your time coming to us if you're not open to following a process that actually tries to identify the core problem of what you're facing and then trying to come up with one or perhaps several solutions that could potentially solve that problem and then go through a process with us where we can contrast the options that we have available, figure out whether they would actually solve that problem in the real world, whatever way we need to do that, and then come to some agreement on whether you're comfortable with that implementation, whether we're comfortable with that implementation, and moving forward from there. Most business customers, and that's primarily what we do, right? We're in the business of serving businesses. Even though we want to really make a difference in the people's lives, we're in the business of serving businesses. The Most of the people who work in businesses that don't do exactly what we do not have a background in running discoveries in the way that we do. They do not have a background in doing the figuring out what potential solutions could be and figuring out which ones of those meet the cost constraints or meet the timeline constraints or meet the complexity constraints that they have. It is a complex job. And if you didn't need that because you had it solved, you wouldn't need a firm, whether it's us or one of the other partners. You wouldn't need us. You could do that on your own quite handily.
So let's talk HubSpot specifically because I talk to I don't know how many significant amount of people per week for 5 years. One of the things that I run into a lot, and if you're shopping for software or you have, please don't do this. What a lot of people will do is they'll go to their HubSpot growth specialist and they'll say, "Does HubSpot do this specific thing?" And what a lot of the growth specialists will do, not all of them, but a lot of them, they just answer the question. Does HubSpot do, this particular function or feature? A better way to approach that, kind of referenced this earlier, is I'm trying to accomplish the following and just describe what you're trying to accomplish. I'm trying to have a way to, you know, input pricing information to produce a quote that can be electronically signed, which will trigger an invoice, right? That's a different framework. And it might sound subtle, but it's a different framework because then a practitioner can take in that information, probably ask some additional questions on what you're looking to accomplish, and then prescribe how to do it. So with HubSpot specifically, it's a great platform. It does a lot of things out of the box. One of the nice things that HubSpot has done, and in my opinion is accelerating, is they open up tools and mechanisms for us to customize. Now, I gotta spend a moment on customize. So I was a former Salesforce customer when I was on the corporate side for about 7 years. Went to Dreamforce every year. Was drinking the blue Kool Aid, the whole deal. Um, Customizing is different based on what platform you're on and what tools they open up to developers. Uh, Some of it requires, like in Salesforce, you need Apex code, and you got to build these massively complicated, massively expensive custom things for something that doesn't need to be custom. Whereas oftentimes with HubSpot, we can add a layer. There was a sales call that I was reviewing the other day where somebody was feature shopping, like I was describing, and they're like, "Nope, it doesn't do that. Nope, it doesn't do that." And as I was watching it, I'm like talking to the screen. I'm like, "But it could with one minor tweak, with one minor adjustment, it can do everything there." And so again, I'm just really advocating against just looking at the bullet points and what does it do and what does it not do. And maybe Corné, maybe you can give some advice or some wisdom on some of the stuff that HubSpot allows us to do, or people, things that people wouldn't be aware of, or anything you want to add.
Sure. I think what Thomas is talking about is the ability to build custom cards. Now, those are custom and they do require some development. With the correct HubSpot subscriptions, pretty much all of that can live inside of HubSpot, quote unquote natively. And you don't need to involve like external services. So you would need to engage with a developer. The languages are widely known, widely used, probably some of the biggest sort of ecosystems in terms of developers on the planet. So we talk about Node.js here. It's really simple to acquire someone that can do the work for you. It's not necessarily simple to prescribe to them what the work should be, but it's really simple to get someone that can do the work or can maintain that moving forward if necessary. But what that allows us to do is really in some ways change the functionality or feature set that's available in HubSpot, either subtly or quite dramatically, or it allows us to just layer a different user experience onto things that already exist. So, no, it doesn't do that natively because the user experience isn't great for that specific example. It requires 12 clicks, or you're going to three different screens, or right there are reasons why that doesn't work natively in the way that HubSpot just functions. But you can relatively simply build a custom card that can tie a bunch of backend functionality in HubSpot together in order to reach a specific outcome really, really easily. It is now this has been out for a couple of years, but this has really been a game changer in how we do HubSpot implementations, and we're leaning more and more into incorporating custom cards into the solutions that we do because it doesn't just solve the technical problem. It also solves the user experience problem, which oftentimes is the bigger one for us to solve. Teams will not adopt things that don't feel like it enables them. They will just not do it. This takes too many clicks, or it takes too long to load, or it's too complicated to understand how this works. If you can sort of abstract out that complication and the back end complexity or time consuming tasks, you can make a massive difference in how people do things. One example is um, address validation for the service industry, right? Field services. Actually, dispatching someone out to your house to take care of a problem that you have. We had a customer that was doing that through just a ludicrous process. So, incoming phone call, collect the information on the phone call from the prospect, try and enter their address information into a Google Maps Chrome tab that they have open. Once they've located that, they then have a back and forth communication with the client to try and figure out whether the address that they found is in fact the correct address. Then trying to figure out whether they have a service location within whatever sort of radius they service, and then needing to take that information back into their CRM, capture that, and hoping that nothing goes wrong during that process. It's hundreds of clicks to achieve something that in HubSpot with a custom card can be entering the address into 3 or 4 text boxes that are laid out logically for capturing an address. You click search, we hit the Google API for you. We bring back either a validated address or a list of um, potential addresses that you may have intended for that to be if there is something wrong with it. It's a very simple process, doesn't require any more clicks. The address is immediately saved within your CRM. You don't have to do any back and forth copying, and you can in fact collect that stuff in many different ways. It doesn't just have to be over the phone, which can be error prone. It just opens up a massive change in the user experience for that team and takes you from hundreds of clicks to effectively, in this instance, I don't know, 3, 4 clicks for them to actually create the prospect record and have it assigned to the correct location to go and service. Just massive, massive gains in efficiency.
Let's talk about a few specific customer projects. Obviously, we won't share anything that's confidential or proprietary, but to really just go through some complex use cases that can be solved on, the agentic customer platform, which is what HubSpot is kind of repositioning it as, which I'm a big fan of. Courtney, if you can talk about, there was the customer that essentially brokered the affiliate advertising opportunities. If you can kind of just talk about the problem to solve and talk through some of the cool things that we were able to accomplish for them.
They were coming from an aging platform that they built in house, which effectively took care of their CRM needs. It took care of their sort of web presence or their website, and it took care of some back end logic in controlling, um, shall we just say, profitability of the business that they were doing. Aging platform, sort of on its last legs, frequent failures, um, lack of skill in order to maintain it within the business, and really getting into a space where that was an unsustainable thing for them moving forward. What we were able to do for them was, I'll just break this down into a couple of different things. Of course, replace their CRM with HubSpot native, the way that it is intended to be used. And this is for really simplistic use cases, things like collecting information about customers through things like web forms, and then being able to feed that into the CRM, and then being able to do um, basic communication, basic marketing to those prospects, just in order to keep them one abreast of what's happening in the business, right? What offers you've got available, and two, really to keep them engaged so that they don't end up going somewhere else or forgetting about you. Really, sort of core HubSpot use case. The cooler thing there is being able to build their website directly on top of HubSpot CMS at that point. content now, and being able to really utilize the data that they already had inside of HubSpot around what their offers are, and then being able to drive customized content to visitors to their site based on um, the geography that they're coming from, based on prior offers that they showed interest in, really having a tailored experience to the vertical that that prospect falls into, so that you drive effectively higher conversion rates. And I don't want to quote percentages because I don't remember exactly what it was, but I mean, we saw I'm guessing I can say more than 50% uplift in uh, conversions of value, right? Real, true conversions in a very short period of time after taking that portion of the solution live. And then the more complex side of this is that sort of profitability control mechanism that I was talking about. Proprietary to the customer, we're not going to go into exactly what it does or how it works, but suffice to say that we were able to collect information on how their offers are doing, and then 100% within HubSpot using uh, a couple of custom objects, I guess we would say, along with HubSpot's, again, Operations Hub Pro custom coded workflows at that time. They're now Data Hub Pro workflows. Being able to transpose their entire custom solution that they had on an on premise server that was failing, aging, and often running into significant problems, and rebuilding that inside of HubSpot using native functionality and solving their problem effectively permanently. The infrastructure is now maintained by HubSpot. They do not need to maintain it. They've gained full logging on exactly what is happening because of the way that workflow logging works. We have full retriability on what is happening. Everything just works. Now, that was not a simple process to get there, but it was a highly successful process to get there. And despite the uptick, again, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think like 300% uptick in business, something like that. The solution is working beautifully as designed, with effectively zero overhead to them over and above what their HubSpot subscription is, which is that is an incredible feat to get from aging on premise, truly expensive to maintain, error prone, failure prone local infrastructure.
And the value didn't just come from the complex solution that we were able to put into place. I mean, that was the problem to solve, as I kind of referenced earlier. A lot of the growth came because they built it, or we built it for them on the agentic customer platform that is known as HubSpot. They got significant value out of normal HubSpot stuff because now their website was on HubSpot. These processes were happening inside HubSpot. Now their marketing person can do segmentation, dynamic content. They've got lead scoring. They've got like these other things that are out of the box. When you are building, I want to say all, more of your business inside the same building, you have efficiencies that come from the other things that are already in that building. And that wasn't even the reason that they came to us. That was in the back of their mind. They were looking to solve the complex problem. And knowing that if we were able to solve the complex problem on the same platform, that they would get all of these additional out of the box benefits.
Exactly. So moving that sort of complex component, which was their honestly, that was their core concern. They were looking for a partner that could convince them that not just that they understood the problem that they were trying to solve, but that they could solve the problem. I'll just share a tiny little bit more there. Effectively, the solution that they had built was so old that they were relying on the system as deployed. They really didn't have access to the source code anymore in order to be able to, effectively rebuild that exactly as it was implemented. So they were really looking for a partner that could convince them, one, they can understand the problem, two, they can actually solve that problem without needing access to the original code that was the original solve for that problem, which we were one, able to convince them, two, we were able to deliver on that. So that was what they were truly choosing a partner on. But aside from that, The fact that they're no longer using an in-house privately built CRM just expanded the capabilities that they have to just incredible sort of proportions compared to what they had before. And it is ever evolving now. So instead of being stagnant inside of a proprietary system, unless they undertake extreme development efforts in order to expand it, they're now just getting those effectively for free. Right. Every time HubSpot releases a new feature that actually has benefit for their particular industry or their particular use case. Not everything HubSpot releases works for them, but every time there is something new, they get to basically bring that thing online with almost no effort, almost no implementation overhead. They just gain access to those features and they're able to grow the business at a truly astonishing rate. It was wonderful to be a part of that, and it was great to be able to help them do that.
And one of the other risks that they had was, and this is I'm sharing because it is something that we see often, the proprietary system, the homegrown system that they had was dangerously dependent on one individual who built it. Whereas now that their system is in HubSpot and done in a responsible manner, any HubSpot practitioner can get in, modify it, change it, understand it, versus when everything lives inside of the head of one person. If something were to happen to that person, your entire business is at risk. And when I was on the corporate side, we had our CTO. We had a really nasty old legacy system, which had all sorts of challenges to it, and it was 100% dependent on literally one person. The software that we'd used had been deprecated like 2 decades earlier, and they ended up hiring one of the engineers from that company when they went out of business and made him the CTO. And he literally held the company together. And not trying to like stoke fear or anything, but he had a near death experience where if somebody wouldn't have come to his house at a certain time, he would have passed away. And it sent shockwaves through the company because we're like literally the business would have gone. I don't know if it would have gone out of business, but they would not have been able to conduct business for however long it would have taken to figure out what was done. And a lot of customers that we talk to have a similar situation where it's one or two key people that only one or two key people understand how they built their homegrown system. And that's a significant business risk and something that comes up a lot when we get into the old build versus buy um, debate, right? And do we build something proprietary? Maybe you spend the same amount of money on implementation up front, but then maybe your monthly costs are lower, but your total lifetime costs usually are not, right? You're introducing new risk into the organization.
The core of that is your business has a core function, the things that you really value and focus on, things that generate income. And anything you're taking on internally that doesn't add to your ability to generate income in that sort of core business that you're in is a bad business decision. The end. Taking on the decision to build something proprietary where something basically off the shelf already exists that solves the problem well, that is well staffed, well funded, has a team of people whose literal life is maintaining, enhancing, keeping that particular system up to date and running. That is a good investment of your money. Now, yes, monthly subscriptions can become very expensive, but come and talk to me about how expensive a monthly subscription is when your in-house built tool fails and you are unable to operate for I have personally seen businesses be unable to operate for weeks. And we're not talking about SMB here. We're talking about true enterprise giants in the world not being able to operate for weeks in a particular business unit because someone built something proprietary that the business was basically hanging on by a thread from this thing that they built in house. They lose the experience on how to maintain it, or the person that was maintaining it is too busy, or is unexpectedly out of office, or is expectedly out of office, but unexpectedly there is a system problem. Those things are really difficult to quantify until they happen. And then they're really easy to quantify because you can literally look at the dollars not coming in the door.
Speaking of dangerous, let me segue into a topic: vibe coding. The pulse check I get mostly like on LinkedIn, but even in some customer conversations, I'm gonna show you how old I am with this reference here, but it feels like people think that they just discovered Napster 25 years ago, where they're like, "Hey, you don't have to buy CDs anymore. Here's this free thing where we can download illegal music or whatever." Next thing you know, they're downloading viruses and their computers are crashing, and they did disrupt an industry. Probably not the perfect parallel here, but when we're talking about building risky stuff that might fail or might introduce new risk, the vibe coding thing is it's a real topic. I probably see 2 or 3 posts per week on LinkedIn. I'm gonna make fun of one right now where it's like, hey, instead of spending $2,000 a month on HubSpot, I just spent 45 days creating my own CRM that does everything that we need. And it's the posture of victory that they're taking that seems silly to me. I'm not trying to sound like an old curmudgeon that's like, fighting the advances that AI is going to make possible for us, but it's not a great total view on the risks that you're introducing and the costs of disruption for not if, but when something doesn't go as planned. Corné, I am assuming you've got a strong opinion on vibe coding, so I'm just trying to tee you up here so you can you can do your thing.
I do. I'll try and keep it sort of temperate. I think vibe coding is wonderful, which Tom is going to laugh at because I've softened my position on it in sort of the last couple of months. But I think it's wonderful for prototyping. The the pace at which you can get something stood up that resembles a product or resembles a solution is staggeringly quick. As in, it is a real superpower. It is a real game changer. But note that I said prototype or something that resembles a solution. Taking something that has been truly vibe coded and turning it into something that is production ready isn't really significantly less effort than developing it from scratch and turning it into something that is production ready. The places where you're truly saving time here is you're not spending time building something and then rebuilding it because it doesn't quite solve the need and doesn't quite solve the need, doesn't quite solve the need. You can do all of that with the vibe coding side, figure out what the problem space actually looks like and what the solution looks like in concept, at least. Make sure you have the feature set that you need to cover that. Make sure that you have the logic largely defined for what would drive the sort of business decisions around that, financial decisions, etc. And then you can have your team build with the use of AI or without, you can have them build the actual product or the actual solution from that prototype. However, taking something that has been vibe coded and just assuming that it is production ready is ludicrous to me. I don't take, I can build a car in my backyard if I want to. I'm not going to build a car in my backyard in a week and then claim that it is now, I'm going to take on VW Auto Group, right? Here is the new Bugatti, and this thing solves all the problems. It is a luxury vehicle with all the things. No, 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 no. They have crash tested more cars in the last week than you have built in your entire life. The same thing is true for true production grade software. It's not, now the building is expensive and the building does take time. But the thing that truly takes time is doing things like security audits, code reviews, right? Doing actual automated and manual testing, doing regression testing, all the stuff that needs a human in the loop and preferably needs an intelligent human in the loop, right? I understand that the state of AI is such that anyone can write a prompt and get something out of it that resembles something that works. But my take on that is if you can't build it by hand, you shouldn't build it at all as a product, right? As a prototype, fair game. But as a product, if you can't build it by hand, you shouldn't build it at all. because you don't understand what you're getting into. You don't understand the complexities, you don't understand the risks, and honestly, you're not informed enough to make the decisions that turn that thing into a product. Now, if it's for internal use, I still don't approve of this, but if it's for internal use, you decide that that is an acceptable risk to your business, fine. I don't have a particular problem with that. The issue is really when people try and convince others that they should do it, right? It's like, I built my own hang glider this weekend. That's cool. I'm going to go hang gliding this weekend. That's cool. Do you want to come with me and build your own one? Like, no, I do not want to do that. You can go and do that. I do not have any interest in doing that. And spending time trying to convince people that they should do it is irresponsible. And it's generally done by people who don't understand. It's done by people who can't build it by hand, I guess, is where I'm going with that.
It's little Dunning-Kruger effect.
100%.
And the phrase that you just said that I want to resurface is, if you've decided that is acceptable risk. I'm going to posit to you for pondering. Have you even sat and spent a few minutes and thinking about, what is my acceptable risk? What is my risk exposure here? A lot of the posts that I'm seeing, they haven't. And to me, that's just mind blowing that risk isn't part of the equation, and ways to mitigate that risks. We have someone we are talking with who has millions of contacts, and a highly regulated industry, and they have a young relative that's related to one of the principals, who was vibe coding this solution, and they were seriously considering it. And to me, it's just mind blowing, especially in a highly regulated industry. Just the level of risk. And it's one thing when I see like a small business, they got 6 employees, right? They're like a small HVAC shop or something, and they want to vibe code something so they can track their appointments or get different reporting. Great. There's probably not a ton of risk there. You probably have clipboards around the office with work orders on them. So, if the thing crashed or did something wrong, you're not out of business. That's not the case in every industry. A lot of industries, literally the entire organization depends on having the systems run, having reliable backups, having compliance in place, uh, and just really mitigating those risks. So at a minimum, I know it's cool, I know it's new, I know it's shiny, but assess the risk. And there's literally no harm in talking to somebody who knows and does this type of thing. Use your vibe coding whims to build some cool features, or build some CRM cards, or some neat integrations on top of a stable platform that has taken into account risks. That way, you can still have some fun, build some cool stuff, but you're adding features to a car that's been crash tested and certified as compliant, as opposed to building the whole car. So there's ways to get your creative juices flowing and satisfy that urge to build cool stuff. Doesn't mean you need to go and build the whole thing. As I tell my kids, life has a way of teaching lessons, and you don't need to hear it from a podcast, because you're going to learn it one way or another. And it's how we've learned a lot of our lessons, through our corporate years, and even as business owners. That you know, second mouse gets the cheese is a phrase that I usually say, even though it doesn't get laughs. But you know, don't make the same mistake somebody right in front of you has already made. It's avoidable. And sorry for the dad speech, but it's in my DNA.
I have seen some pretty bad things happen in some pretty major industries because no one really understood the risks that they were taking. And in the industries where I have seen tons of success in taking risks are the ones that, one, is an educated risk, two, there are alternative processes to every single thing that they do, right? For those of you who are old enough, you probably have been in an industry at some point, somewhere, where someone used the phrase, "This is not working, just go manual." And they go and pull the like manual order sheets out the cupboard and they start writing sales orders in pen on the sales floor, right? Or any other examples, right? The delivery notes no longer go out of the automated system. Someone is literally like rummaging through a pile of orders to be packed that get printed automatically every single day for every single order, even if they don't use it. It goes in the back of the cupboard where the sort of work order printer sits inside of the warehouse. No one looks at that stuff until the day that the internet goes down or the power grid fails or someone vibe codes a portion of an application that they shouldn't and insert your favorite AI sort of coding agent here, misunderstands a command and rips out an entire portion of a functional application because it misunderstood what you said by I don't like the way that this thing is implemented. Fix it. And ripping it out wasn't a valid way of fixing the fact that you didn't like it. With someone that just gives it complete access to get, just get commit, do a PR, accept the PR, just do all the things for me because it's easier if you just do all the things for me and you auto deploy some mess to production, which I guarantee you is happening right now somewhere. Someone has given that thing the keys to the kingdom and it is running wild.
See, and that brings up a rehash of something that I keep harping on, but I'm watching the show right now. It's called The Pit. It's on HBO. Great show. It's season 2, and it's essentially an emergency room, right? And you get to know the characters, and there's always something happening. And about halfway through season 2, there's cyber attacks going around, and so the hospital makes the decision that they're going analog. So they shut all the computers down, and all of the uh, old school people who've been on staff long enough to know how to run an emergency room analog, they pull a patient whiteboard out of the closet, they pull out their clipboards, they pull out their forms, they've got some like shorthand templates that they hung on the wall so they can do shorthand. And what I like about this, and I'm going somewhere with this, stay with me. Um, they're running an emergency room analog, right? The clipboard, when you need labs, goes here in this order. When the labs are back, they go over there. When you put something in, you ring the little bell on the desk. There's a specific phone for specific things. They've got runners that are running the clipboards from the emergency room to the labs and returning results. And everything has a place. And there is a business process in place that when technology is present, runs much more smoothly, but not dependent on the technology. The technology isn't the process. The process is the process. The technology makes the process better, more effective, more efficient, faster, but the process is the process. So, kind of going back to one of my earlier points on this episode was uh, stop feature shopping. Let's talk about the process. What do you want to happen? Who needs to be involved? At what point? What information do they need? At what point do they need the information? Who else needs to be involved? Does somebody need to sign off on that? Does somebody need visibility into that? Right? Like talk through the business problem that you're trying to solve and then let a technology practitioner or somebody who really knows both sides, that knows process and knows the technology, and saying, oh wow, we could really make this part of the process faster, better, smoother, whatever. um, but if you don't have clear articulation and understanding of what the process is, I promise you whatever technology you're going to put into place isn't going to fix that. It's just going to enhance whatever garbage you've got. You're just going to have faster, better, smoother garbage. And then again, just to rant on the stuff I see in LinkedIn, then you blame the software. Oh, well, it didn't really do that. No, it did exactly the mess that you have. Now you just have more visibility into the fact that your process is a mess. Now you have more visibility into the fact that you have no idea what your people are doing because you haven't given them the framework and structure on how to run their jobs. You haven't educated them on the key essentials of their function, right? So it's not the platform that changes the business. It's great business process that changes the business. The platform or the technology can mitigate risks, can make it go more smoothly, can enhance that, can, all of the things. And so if you get anything out of this episode, it's nobody can help you until you know what your process is. Point blank.
Now, they can help you figure out what your process is. So they can't help you build a bunch of stuff around your process if there isn't a defined process. But if you're unsure, there are companies that can help you define that. You just have to be open to it, because not having it and still having a rigid belief in what it should be, despite evidence showing you the opposite, is it's insane, right? It's borderline insane. So you either know how it works and how it should work, or you don't, and then just be a participant in the process of defining it. Uh, don't dictate what it should be from a space of no experience or limited view inside of how things actually are done.
One of my favorite customer interactions that Corné and I were on together, I think it was our first year in business, and we were on with a customer. It was an HVAC company, old systems, literal clipboards on these systems. And the champion we were speaking to was describing the process. And she spent, I don't know, it felt like 5 minutes. It might have been two or three, just detailing, and then this happens. And then, the clipboard gets over here. And then this thing goes over here. And then, turn the fan on and that blows the paper into the right bin. And I mean, I'm just being silly with it, but it was wild. And at the end of her description, she asks Renee, she goes, "Does that make sense?" And he says, "No, none of that makes any sense. I understand the words that you're saying to me, but no, it does not make sense." Which I chuckle about that at least once a month, and that's probably 4 years ago. Now we were able to help them, obviously, um, but yeah,
Great customers, great customers. Just they
great,
were they were coming from a bad base, a really bad
correct.
base, but great
A-
customers.
and to your point about being able to help someone with business, my some of the most successful customers we have are the ones that come to us and say, "Hey, we'd love some feedback on our process. We know you see this type of stuff all the time. We know you see best practices. Let me kind of outline what we have. We're open to feedback. We'd love some recommendations and feedback." The openness and the willingness to engage, number one green flag and determinant of a successful project is simply being open. Being open, as my grandmother would say, being coachable, right? If you're coachable, people can help. And to Corne's point, that's not always the case. And and that's okay. The ones that we're able to be helpful for or with typically are, hey, we're open to some feedback. Here's what we're trying to do. Here's what we're wanting to happen in the end. Right? We want people out in the field to be able to see this type of information for this type of reason. Right? We want you get it.
The world is an interesting place, and we can help if you're willing, and if you're not willing, that's fine. I'm sure that you will find someone that is either willing to help or more amenable to dictating what solutions should be, instead of approaching it as a scientific method and really uh, defining the problem and then testing potential solutions until you arrive at something that actually solves it. Right? You have to have a hypothesis that you can then test, and you have to be open to that hypothesis being wrong, or what you're testing in order to solve that being wrong, and iterating on top of it. Nothing in the world is perfect, nothing, and you need to be open to um, experimentation. Now, you don't want to experiment at the cost of your client, so don't go do something completely wild, wacky, and completely insane on their budget. Businesses are not that unique. Sure, there are industry specific things, but I mean, efficient businesses that actually are profitable and survive the test of time generally have a lot in common in terms of their business processes. Again, there are some vertical specific things that businesses have to do, but by and large, they're run in the same sort of fashion. So you can do some experimentation inside of reasonable, safe assumptions based on how businesses have run for hundreds of years. Technology just made it more efficient.
Well, that is the end of our first episode here at Welcome to the Tech Show. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you again.